Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. In this video, I'm going to do an update on the XRP bull run structure. So XRP has a repetitive bull run structure. In this video, we're going to talk about what we've already accomplished and what we can expect to begin to take place as we approach the peak. That is where we are headed to. We're closer than you may think. So before we go there, it's important to understand that XRP has a repetitive macro structure. For those of you who follow this channel, you know what this is. So this macro structure essentially includes bull runs. After a bull run comes a decline. Yes, it's going to happen to this bull run. There will be a decline. These declines, as you can see, they're not pretty. They're intense. They can last a long time, and they can fall quite a bit. So be prepared for that to eventually print on the XRP chart. After the decline, there is a range-bound time. Now, I take these bull runs, declines, and range-bound times, and I break them up into smaller structures. Now, these smaller structures, they repeat to make up the larger structures, and these larger structures repeat over and over again. So if we went to the beginning of the XRP chart, we could see that these same structures, they are present. It starts with a range-bound time. It goes into the bull run, and then goes into the decline, goes into the next range-bound time. Now, it's important to understand that every single time these structures repeat, they look unique. And the reason why they look unique, even though they repeat the same basic patterns, is because when a structure or a fractal repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth, those do not copy over. Those will be original. So what that means is that a part of a structure can play out larger or smaller than the previous one, or the timing can play out on a large scale. Some of these range-bound times, they can last a really short time. Sometimes they can last years. The height and the depth can play out uniquely. So all that gives novelty to the new iteration, even though it's repeating the same basic functions. And that is what this type of technical analysis really focuses on. It focuses on the functions of these structures. So with that information and that intro, let's jump to today's current bull run structure. Now I'm going to jump over to CoinTrader Pro, and the reason why I'm going to do that is because it allows me to examine past bull run structures on a small time frame. So I'm, for the most part, going to be on an hour candle. So here is today's bull run structure. Now, the bull run structure has three corrective parts to it, three corrective structures within the greater bull run structure. Let me explain these structures to you. So it starts with the end of the sideways range-bound time, so price begins to move up, and it will have smaller pullbacks along the way, but once you kind of get to a large pullback, and then it kind of goes into, they're typically just classic consolidation patterns that you would see in a bull run structure. Once you see a large pullback and the consolidation patterns start to form, you know that you're in the first corrective structure. Now, these can play out on small scale or large scale. So after it leaves this first corrective structure, it goes into the second corrective structure. What's unique about this second corrective structure is it has two parts. It has a lower part, and then it moves up into an upper part. After it leaves the second corrective structure, it moves up and goes into the third corrective structure. Look how large this corrective structure was when compared back to these two. Actually, believe it or not, that's not unusual. What is kind of unique today is that this bull run structure is the longest bull run structure in XRP's history so far. That's measuring from when it leaves the high of this last little part of the third range-bound fractal, and it begins to move up. This one so far, at the time of this recording, has lasted, I believe, 72 days. So today's bull run structure is clearly lasting a very long time. Now, what is going on over here? This is what I would like to talk about. So After it gets above this third corrective structure, I've talked about this in previous videos. So what happens is it goes into its blow-off top. Now, this blow-off top is a repetitive structure, and I've made a video on this blow-off top. You can find it here, how to nail the peak. So what happens is XRP goes into a parabolic move up to the peak. This parabolic move, you can count 7 moves in that move up to the peak. So are we counting this right now? Is this part of that 7 move count? Well, I do not believe it is. And here's the rule for counting the 7 moves to the top. 1, it needs to be above the third corrective structure, which it is, and 2, it has to be going vertical. When this first started, I thought, well, hey, let's start counting, but then it went into this large sideways kind of range-bound structure or consolidation. As this has developed, I realized that this should not be counted, as this is a part where it goes sideways, and when it's going sideways, the counting does not start. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is XRP's second bull run. Now, this took place in 2014, November, and it comes to a peak in December 2014. Here are the 3 corrective structures, and look how large the third one is. It's similar to today. When compared to these other 2, at least it's much larger. So there are 7 moves to the peak, but we have this kind of part right here where it goes flat. We do not count that. But once it starts going vertical, then we can count. So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Notice also that this whole structure plays out in a very short amount of time. So the move up to the peak is likely going to play out on a small time frame. So you do not want to be on a day candle. You'll probably miss it. So once again, we start counting after the flat, sideways, range-bound structures, and it has to be going vertical. It has to be going vertical, and it has to be above the third corrective structure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. When you see a structure, a pullback like this, count it all as 1, and these tiny little things you ignore. You're basically looking for similar sized pullbacks to take place. This is your typical peak. It has a larger peak with 2 smaller peaks. However, there is an anomaly to this, and that is the very first bull run structure. So this one, I have to be on a 5-minute candle because it played out so fast. So once it gets above the high of the third corrective structure, we can start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 gets you to the peak here. However, if you notice that there is a second peak that forms here, and then you have the 2 smaller peaks, this is very unusual. It's only happened once, but it is possible that it will happen again. So this 7 count will get you to this first peak. However, if this was to ever play out again, which it can, because once it gets printed on a chart, there's a possibility it will play out again. Now, I'll have to say that this is probably a lower probability of this structure playing out, but just be prepared that if you did see something where you see a peak like this and then it starts going up, to challenge this peak, know that it has potential to actually get above this first peak. Once again, it's not likely that this is going to play out, but it is a possibility. And then, of course, you have the 2 smaller peaks, and that once you see these 2 smaller peaks complete, you know that this peak structure is complete, and you should expect a decline. Sometimes the decline's not right away. It all depends on how the declining structure plays out. The declining structure is a repetitive structure, but sometimes certain parts of that declining structure can be more prominent than others. So this second one that we're looking at in 2014, by the way, the first one takes place in December 2013. So this is the more common peak structure, and then look how prominent this first part of the decline is, this A fractal. So that is a possibility. Sometimes it even goes up a little higher than this. It's always possible that we can get something like this, but I would be prepared for something like this to take place as well. So this is another bull run structure that I want to show you, because once again, what's happening on today's chart with the part where it's going flat is also present in this one. So this one takes place in the early part of 2017, April 2017, and it comes to its peak in May 2017. This one actually has a whole series of smaller bull run structures within the first move up out of the range bound sideways time. It then goes into its first corrective structure, which was very large. And by the way, it's always the corrective structures that make a bull run last a long time. It's not the parts that move up. Those happen fast. So here's the second corrective structure. We have the two parts to it, the lower part and then the upper part, then moves up and has the third corrective structure. The third and the first typically are more similar to each other, although they can be different. Look how long this one took to play out versus this one. And this also brings up the point. Any one of these structures can technically be the one that lasts the longest. So once it gets above this third corrective structure, let's zoom in on this. So here we are zoomed in. So it gets above, but it's not really going vertical until we get to this part. Then it really takes off. So at this part, we can start counting. So once it goes vertical, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If we zoom in here, we can see a shooting star candle. So there's that fifth one, 5, 6, and 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 brings it to the peak. And then, of course, you have the decline. The decline, and then the two smaller peaks. And then here we have a more prominent beginning of the declining structure. So here we are on today's chart, and we see that it moved up above the third corrective structure, but it's going flat. So what I suspect is going to happen at some point, it's going to pull out of this and it's going to start shooting up. Once it's going vertical, then we can start the counting, and it's going to be fast. Once it gets to the peak, folks, that's it. That's the end. There's no telling how high it will go, but history does weigh in on what is normal. So let me show you. Okay, so this is the first bull run structure. This took place in 2013. And if we measure from the top of the third corrective structure to the peak, that was roughly a little over 10%, a 10% rise, almost 11%. I could be off on some of these measurements, but I just want to give you a rough idea of what the move up from the third corrective structure to the peak has historically looked like. So this is the second bull run that took place in 2014. If we measure from the top of the third corrective structure to the peak, that was roughly 83.13%. So much larger than the first one, which was only 11%. I think that 11% or 10% was actually the least. So let's look at the next one. Okay, so here we are in the April-May 2017 bull run structure. Let's measure this one from the top of the third corrective structure to the peak. That was roughly 83, maybe could be 84. So let's say 84. Give it a little benefit of the doubt there. So this one takes place in December 2017 / January 2018. And roughly it is 33, maybe 34%. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this one takes place in April 2021. Let's measure from the top of the third corrective structure to the peak. That is roughly 30, maybe could be 31%. And let's go to today's chart. So here we are at today's chart. Let's measure from the top of the third corrective structure. Again, these are rough estimates. So far, it's moved up 18.54%. Let's say it goes to 80%, or let's do 80. Give ourselves a little room. So that would be $5.13 roughly. Let's say it went to 84, that would be $5.24. My point with all of this is that history tells us that we're not going to go 400% from here. So if it was 80%, it would be in the $5 range. Now, I'm not going to tell you how high it's going to go. My analysis is purely about structure. I don't try to analyze price. I just ride the structure up. Once I know the peak is there, I sell. It's super easy. Well, sometimes it can be complicated, but that's my strategy. I think it's important that you are grounded in what history tells us happens from this point onward. For those of you who are betting on $8, $9, $10, you need to be open. I'm not saying that it can't go there to potentially $5. It could be less. It could be more. I don't know. For those of you who are thinking hundreds, I have news for you. Most likely not in this bull run. You're going to be a round tripper if you don't understand what I'm trying to tell you right now. So I would start making those adjustments mentally to where you have your grand dreams of how high you want XRP to go to what history shows us is more likely. This is the grounded picture of the XRP bull run structure. So now I want to step back and show you the bigger picture. In one of my previous videos, I showed you what the Dow Jones was doing. I want to give a follow-up on that. So this is the Dow Jones. This box right here takes place from December 2018 to March 2020, and this decline, this crash that we see take place in this box is the crash that resulted from the C-19 shutdowns. So when the economies of the world closed down, we saw this crash. Well, if we were to take this structure and copy and paste it over on this side of the chart, and of course we have to adjust it for the timing, height, and depth that come after this box, this is what we get. As you can see, the Dow Jones has been following fairly closely, actually pretty closely, this structure. Well, we are nearing the peak. Folks, we don't have much time left before we reach this peak. Now, maybe we'll dodge a bullet and this structure won't produce this. But I would not go into it thinking that we're going to dodge a bullet. There's a good chance that we will see this materialize. Now, I don't know how low it will go because the timing, height, and depth will play out uniquely, just as it has played out uniquely over here. But it is possible it could be something similar to this. You know, if we were to compare this decline to the 1929 crash, the 1929 decline that took place on the Dow Jones, it would look something like this. So this is that C-19 decline compared to the 1929 decline. As you can see, they're the same structure. So what we are going into has potential to be a 1929-esque type decline. The Dow Jones, from my last update, has been plowing along. It's not stopping. It's getting closer and closer to the day that this decline will potentially begin. Crypto in general may peak potentially right around the time when the Dow Jones peaks. Navigating this moment is challenging. It's not going to be easy. To think that XRP is just going to continue moving up or have multiple bull runs back to back, you are potentially setting yourself up to be caught in this. And you don't want to get caught in this. You need to have your head on a swivel. It feels great right now in crypto. If you've been in XRP, you've been waiting for this day to come, and it's finally here. This is the harvest time. This is not the summertime where you can sit back and relax and enjoy the nice weather. We have a nasty winter storm potentially on the horizon. We need to harvest before that hits. Maybe we will dodge the bullet with the Dow Jones, but I would not count on it. I would be prepared. I would walk circumspectly. I would be aware of your environment. If you think that this party in XRP is going to continue on, you may be stuck in that coming storm. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, it'd be much appreciated if you hit that thumbs up button. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But if you did enjoy this video and you're not yet a subscriber, I recommend hitting that subscribe button. You know, I also have a Patreon, and connected to that Patreon is a Discord where I give regular updates. People share their charts. We have great discussions around XRP, crypto, and just the market in general. You're welcome to join. It's a $5 a month subscription. Put the link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.